Hello.
What's going on?
Can everyone hear us, see us in the comments? I see Boston's. Yes, they can hear and see us. So
What
we're
do I
live.
like to see the comments again, Ben?
Oh, so you go onto the engage on the right-hand side, you see the engage button, and I'll show you the entire chat.
Okay, engage. Let's click this. Poor man. Oh, there's everyone. Greetings. Yes, we got a lot of yeses in here.
All
Tina
right,
just
perfect.
gave a whole bunch of eyes. So we're going to kick off into webinar 2 in just a second. But I said, Min, we have to talk about something fun at the beginning of every webinar. Otherwise, everyone's going to think we're a snooze fest. So he's brought a topic. I don't know what it is. Something about Thailand, which is where he's at.
Yes,
So
I'm currently.
everyone jump in the chat in the meantime while I tells the story. Give your name, role, company, and your favorite country to visit all time. And then Min, he's got a story about Thailand. So name, company, role, and favorite place to be in the world. Min, you're up. So what's the deal with Thailand?
Well, hey, I got into Thailand yesterday, and
Okay.
I found out a couple things. The first thing is that every single bus has installed 4 cameras and 2 recorders for the sole purpose to make sure that no one is talking bad about Thailand or its rulers. Yeah. Second thing is everywhere you go, there is a huge mural of the emperor. I don't know if Thailand has the emperor. I'm pretty sure he's an emperor still in 2023. But yes, there's murals of him everywhere. And everywhere you go, if you don't especially around government buildings, if you don't stop and bow to the mural, it's a very Buddhist country, so you have to do the three bows.
Yeah.
They'll get you.
They'll get you.
They'll get you. I don't know what that means. All I know is that I will not be trying anything.
That is, yeah, totally. Yeah, on a
Thailand
side
is
note.
amazing. The rulers are amazing.
Well, I'm like, that's how we roll around the Holland household too, is, I just have pictures of myself. You don't bow instantly whenever you walk into my apartment, then I'm going to get you. But lucky, instead of it being, sorry, I'm taking away this sun, instead of it being like an entire country, it's only like 53 square meters, which for anyone doing converting is like 500 square feet. So much smaller square footage. Oh my gosh! Well, I'm seeing a ton of responses in here. We got Angela pinging in with Italy, TJ with Germany. TJ, by the way, we mentioned you last week. It was really nice that you were like, I hope she's okay, because it was you pinged in 30 minutes earlier. That warmed my heart. We got Valerie with France. We got a lot of people with the U.S. Tina says
That's
the
what
U.S.
I'm wondering. Where's everyone? Whoever's putting in U.S., where are you from?
Yeah, or where are you based?
Where are you based? Yes.
Can't be that. We got Peru, good one. Lancaster, yeah, okay. We got some wild people in here, which I'm like, the heart wants what the heart wants. You want Lancaster. Well, cool. Well, welcome everyone. So we're going to be jumping off into webinar 2. Min, anything you need before you go backstage? So Min just joined us for the setup.
Yes, we're adding a new functionality, the Q&A function. If you would like to submit a question, it will come up to review for me, and I will periodically be looking. And if there's any really good questions, I'll make sure to publish them up.
Yeah, Min. So if there are any good questions, just come back on stage. If you can do that, right?
Yes, I can.
All is possible with Zuddle. So if there are any great questions, anyone and everyone, submit your questions in the chat. Min's going to be scouring through, and he's going to come back on stage like Oz behind the curtain and bring the questions up. So Min will be scouring through. So more questions, the better. Better questions, the better. All questions are good questions, mostly speaking. So anyway, okay, Min, we'll see you after the webinar.
So
I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and we are going to go into essentially webinar 2 for today. So if y'all could jump in the chat and let me know yes or no, how many of you were around to see webinar 1? So webinar 1, just as a review. Okay, good. So we got mostly no's. A little hurtful, but okay, so we got mostly no's, but we got some yeses in there. So webinar 1, just from a high level, we covered quite a bit of stuff, but we covered essentially the infrastructure of diagnostic selling and what you're trying to do. So just from a high level, the pieces that we covered in the 3 steps, and then we're gonna go into webinar 2 here, is the first step is uncovering the prospect's self-diagnosis, what they think, believe, and why do they believe that. And there are 7 different elements which we're going to go through today. The second that we went into, and this can all be in the 1-sheeter. So men, if you wouldn't mind, put in the 1-sheeter for diagnostic selling, which is asset 1, and then the diagnostic selling asset 2, which is challenging, which is what we're going to do today. But step 2 is developing your own expert diagnosis. What do you think is the problem? What do you think is the root cause? What do you think is the current impact, future impact, etc.? And then step 3 is developing a diagnosis or diagnosing any unknown problems. So really the goal of all of that information is to uncover information that the buyer doesn't know about, to correct a number of different things, which we're going to dive into today. But those are the 3 steps just from a high level: uncovering their self-diagnosis, developing your own expert diagnosis, and then uncovering any problems that are unknown, anything that they didn't know about. So Min went ahead and put in diagnostic selling asset 1 to give you a more nerdy deep dive if you want to take a look. But webinar 2, we're going to start off with the topic, and this is just a brief review for everyone who's a part of webinar 1, with the difference between a pain and a problem. There's a very significant difference. So a pain is short TLDR version for all the millennials. Pain is just any negative experience. So that can be on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10. It could be a 1. It could be just annoying. It could be deafening. But a pain is just any negative experience. So there are a number of pains that you run into in your day. I mean, thousands of them, and there is pain everywhere. You know, it takes too long to get into your apartment. They switch the codes on your apartment doors, which was a pain for me today. It takes too long to log, it delays you to log into a platform. You can't figure out your password. But pain is any negative experience, and pain is going to be everywhere for everyone all the time in a number of different ways. A problem is going to be anything that someone solves or solves for, that they set out to solve or solve for. So a pain is any negative experience, and a problem is anything that someone decides to solve or solve for. So the impact of the difference there is not all pains are problems, meaning not all things that are a negative experience are something that I'm going to solve or solve for. And not all problems are painful quite yet. Sometimes we're solving for something in the current state to avoid a pain in the future that we know or we are guessing that it's gonna come to be true. So can y'all see all of the slides, or are y'all only on slide 1 where it says webinar 1, just so I know? Does it say webinar 1 on your screen, or does it say not? We see the slides. Okay, you got them. Okay, awesome. So not all pains are problems yet. So this is a great example. It could have been a problem that I didn't know about, hypothetically, if y'all were all still on slide 1. And what you're trying to highlight for your buyer, and the goal of discovery for your buyer, and the goal of a cold call, and the goal of engaging with your buyer, is that you help them by providing information that they didn't know. So a very serious stat that I take to heart is Gartner has done a number of different reports that essentially 86%, anywhere from 83 to 86% of people today do not want a seller involved, regardless of the purchase, whether that's they're purchasing a Diet Coke, they're purchasing enterprise software, whether they're purchasing, a piece of furniture. And if I had to guess why, it's because they typically don't learn information that they didn't know. So why would I have a seller? Why would I introduce a seller into that process? So I'm going to see if everyone can put on their buyer hat for a minute. What does a seller add to the equation that is negative for us? So, great example is you walk into a retail store and the seller comes at you. Yeah, there's one, Tyrell, presumption. So you walk into a retail store, and I say, "How can I help you today?" And what do you say back to me normally? You walk into this retail store and I say, "How can I help you today?" "I'm good." There's another common one, "just looking." Robert got it. Mari got it. Just looking. And it's because we're trying to avoid a number of different things. So pressure, they're pushy, assumption. And if you're anything like me, I don't want to lead a seller on, right? So where they spend time with me when I don't want to buy. But at the same time, I don't want to buy things that I don't need or that I don't want. So there is a cost to having a seller involved because all of a sudden we put someone else's livelihood and their day and their emotions and their world at stake. So we've seen PLG, product-led growth, take off. And the reason, if I had to guess why, is people are so sick of sellers being involved because they don't add any value. They don't find out anything that they didn't know, beforehand from the call with the seller. But what they do add to the equation is pressure and pushiness. And now I've got to be accountable to someone. They're like, just checking in. So the cost of this, of not all pains are problems and not all problems are painful yet. The difference there is I'm not going to solve for everything. And the value that we can really add for the trade-off of being involved is going to be things that they don't know about. So a pain's only going to become a problem essentially in one of two conditions. And then we're going to get in step 2 of what we're challenging. But a pain is only going to become a problem whenever the pain in the present is so egregious. Let's imagine. So I commonly give the example of my iPhone 8 was losing charge last year. And it was losing charge within about 2 hours. So the pain was high, but not high enough to where I bought another phone. But then when I entered and tried to run the New York City Marathon last year, I all of a sudden bought an iPhone 14. And the reason that I did that is not that the pain was high enough in the present, but the impact of not buying an iPhone 14 became so high to where I said, okay, it's finally worth it. So if my phone, let's say my iPhone 8, I had pain. It would lose charge within 2 hours. Let's say that had gone to lost charge in 5 minutes. Okay, the pain would have been big enough in the present. I would have gone and bought a new phone. But the second case of why someone would turn a pain would go to a problem is meaning the iPhone 8, the pain with that would turn into something I'm going to solve for is the impact of what happens if I don't buy it, right? So impact really is just extended pain. So when you look at the definition of impact, it defines it as a countable noun. And what that means essentially is it's something that can be defined. So the impact is the main core of pain of what is mobilizing someone to buy. So if I'm missing quota by 25%, that's pain in the present, right? I'm probably not making my boss very happy, probably not making the money that I want to make. My peers are looking around at why can't you hit quota? But if I have no impact from that, meaning I can buy everything just fine, I'm not getting fired, I'm not getting put on a PIP, then I'm probably not going to solve for it, honestly, because it's just a matter of priority. But the impact of if I do believe I'm going to get fired, or I can't buy something like a mortgage, or I can't support my kids, essentially to eat, then I'm going to go ahead. It's going to mobilize me to change. So change is really, really tough. So I would keep these two things in my mind when I'm thinking about going into discovery. So the second topic we're going to dive into today is what you're challenging. So I want to take a step back for a minute of what challenging means. So there's a great book that essentially goes into, it's called The Evolving Self by Robert Keegan. I would recommend that everyone pick up a copy of it. talks about 5 different selves that you have in your lifetime that you can basically progress to. Most people don't make it beyond self number 4 or self number 3. But the first self is that you become aware that you exist. So you're essentially gonna, when you see babies and they're sticking out their tongue and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm actually here." That's the first self, and you're essentially gonna be in that self anywhere from age 0 to 6. The second self that you morph into is going to be you're aware that other people exist. And what's really interesting, I would definitely recommend that you read this, is the first half of that self. And this age, this self is going to be anywhere from 6 to 16 from a maturity perspective. The first half of that, when you become aware that other people exist, you're trying to win them by positive attention. So you're trying to make your mom and dad happy. You're trying to, essentially get all the accolades at school so you can make mom and dad happy. But then you see an interesting flip on the second half of that second self where you're trying to rebel against your parents. So you're trying to go into negative attention. So from the psychology perspective, you have to be very careful with challenging, because challenging, when you're trying to disprove someone, when you're trying to just say that they're wrong, when you're trying to just one-up them, is only in the second self, which means they're going to flip into parent ego state and they're going to decline you. They're going to say the one word that parents say more than any other word. Let me see if anyone can guess that. What is the one word that parents say more than any other word? Yeah, no. For what reason? Because I said so. So if you are in this second self, in the child ego state, meaning you're challenging just to challenge, and you're challenging with the agenda of manipulating, and you're challenging with a lot of emotion, then they're going to flip into the parent ego state. And even if you quote unquote challenge them from the psychology view, they're still going to say no. So there's a very famous book out there, for legal purposes, I'm not going to say it, about challenging. And most of the feedback that I hear from sales reps is they're like, yeah, but I don't want to be basically a butthead. Because my prospect starts to rebel in the room and starts to get really cagey whenever I start to challenge them. That this is all really valuable information, but basically my prospects, aren't taking this really well. And the reason is, if the goal is strictly to challenge, if that's all you're trying to do, and all of your words and, or to be the expert in the room, then essentially they're going to flip into the parent ego state and they're going to start to rebel and say no. But from the underbelly, what you're trying to correct for your prospects is going to be information that they didn't know that would hurt them. So before we go into this information, I want us all to make a mindset shift if we can. It was a really valuable mindset shift for me. The goal in challenging isn't to challenge someone to be right. It isn't to get our way. If it is, they're going to rebel. The goal of challenging, where it can be constructive, should be that my goal. My goal. Yeah, no, you're fine. The goal of challenging is going to be to help my prospect. All things should be to help my prospect from an agenda perspective, so that I can circumvent them from running into something that's going to hurt them they didn't know. Men, we have a question. Really good question.
Yes, we have a question by Rick N.
Okay.
He asked, when going to the previous topic around pain and problem, he asked, what do you do when your prospect does know that they have a pain or a problem?
Okay, great question. So a pain, by definition, they will always know, meaning pain from a medical perspective actually can only be uncovered by the patient. So if they already know the pain or they already know the problem, within the infrastructure of diagnostic selling, how I would go about it is they think they know the problem, but they might not be correct. And what I mean by that is, in the value of discovery, is they think that they should solve something in order to get an outcome. That's what everyone's after. But what I'm challenging, and I'm not challenging outright, but what I'm gathering information to correct for the prospect, is maybe the business problem isn't the business problem that they want to solve or it isn't the business problem that solving will get them to their outcome. Maybe the root cause that they've identified isn't the root cause of the problem, that if they change that, it actually won't solve the problem. Maybe the current impact isn't even linked to the problem that they want to solve. Maybe the future impact that they're afraid of isn't going to happen or isn't going to be prevented if they solve the business problem that they've identified. Maybe the future event trigger that they think warrants solving for this problem in the present isn't actually worthy of it, it's not causing this the business problem that they think that exists. So if they know their pain, and that's always by definition going to be something that someone knows. So there's only one question that a doctor can ask a patient in regards to pain to identify it. Let's see if anyone can guess it. What does a doctor usually say about pain? What's the question that they ask about pain? Yep, Mark got it. Brilliant. Where are you hurting? Where does it hurt? Or they'll poke around on stuff and they'll be like, does this hurt? Does this hurt? Does this hurt? And then to Mark's brilliant point, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad would you say that this pain is? And the reason is you can't test for pain from an objective perspective. The person only knows the pain themselves. So that's why you had like a bunch of unrest with people with pain medications, that they can't prove that the person's not in pain, essentially. So to answer your question, and then we're going to go this criteria, if someone thinks they know the pain, that's absolutely fine. That's usually where I start. Why'd you come in today? And so they lead me to the pain. But what I'm asking questions to uncover, to correct in the room, is the problem. The problem, the root cause, the current impact, the future impact, current event trigger, future event trigger, and solution. Because they might be wrong for on a number of different levels. So that's what I'm asking. If they think they know the problem, so that's step 1 of diagnostic selling, figuring out what they've self-diagnosed and why they believe that. But the second step that's crucial is that you develop your own diagnosis. So a doctor can't prescribe without diagnosing first. And the reason you have to go see a doctor to get medication is because they don't trust that you can diagnose correctly. So what you're challenging from a high level is what we'll get into in topic 2. So the first thing that we're going to first thing we're going to cover here is that you would be challenging hypothetically problems, not challenging in your words, but challenging in your own mind. That's what a doctor's doing. Doctor doesn't fight with the patient. They're just asking questions to challenge the assumptions of what someone is drawing. So the first thing that you're going to challenge in your mind, and why there are these first 2 steps, is the problem. So you'll see within the deck that I'm wanting to know, what problem does the prospect want to solve, and why do they think that that's the right problem to solve? And then step 2 is, what problem do I think they need to solve in order to get their outcome? And why do I think that that's correct? So what you're trying to identify, why you're going into step 1 and step 2, is because there might be a difference between what problem they think they should be solving and what problem you think that they should be solving in order to get their outcome. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a rep that said, like, I really, really need to hit quota. I'm like, okay, so let's take a step back. What's your KPI right now? You know, where are you at to date? What is the definition of an SQL? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, so an SQL is, it hits a certain amount of BANT criteria and then they're director level plus, you know, and they essentially have 5 reps or more. And my quota is 15. I have to hit 15 meetings in order to get to my pipeline number as an AE, you know, and I'm currently at 7. And I'm like, okay, well, we've got a big gap. But I start asking him questions around, so if you don't mind me asking, why now? It sounds like, you know, from what you mentioned, that you've been at this quota number for a number of months. He said, well, so I started this organization as a temporary leader, right? So they're putting me through a period. And essentially, if I hit this KPI, my quota within the first 3 months, they're going to allow me to be the head of sales within the program. So I started asking a certain number of other questions. I'm like, so did you actually get that on paper that you would become the head of sales? And they're like, no. I'm like, is this the first KPI that you've been given? They're like, actually, it was the fifth. I'm like, did you hit all those other KPIs? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, what were they, if you don't mind me asking? And I start going into it, and I uncover that I'm like, you've had 4 other KPIs, you've hit every single one of them, and they still didn't give you the head of sales position. I'm like, if you don't mind me asking, have they hired other sales reps? And he's like, yeah, they're starting in 2 weeks. So I'm like, when are you supposed to hit this KPI by? And he's like, end of the quarter. So I'm thinking through the math and the reasons that I'm asking him all these questions. And I'm thinking through the math. I'm like, okay, they associated with you 4 different KPIs that you hit all of them, and they still didn't make you the head of sales. They've already hired 2 other reps. They start in 2 weeks, and you're telling me that the KPI is by the end of the quarter, which is 2 months out. So I'm like, this isn't adding up. If these 2 reps are starting, they're going to need to know who their boss is today. That KPI is until 2 months away. So I didn't believe, based on the questions that I was asking, I'm like, when someone signs on, they're going to want to know who their leader is. So I didn't believe that if he did hit quota, that he would become the leader. So I'm uncovering that for him. So punchline of it is, we did get him to quota. He surpassed quota by 140%, and they still didn't make him the head of sales. The outcome that he wanted was to become the head of sales. But the problem that he was trying to solve to get there was that he hit quota. So the business problem is always going to be the problem, is always going to be the metric related thing that they want to solve. But the outcome is why they want to solve it. So step 1 and step 2 is uncovering the self-diagnosis. What is the metric problem that they think that they should be solving, and why do they believe that? And then step 2 is I need to uncover, I'm like, what problem do I think they should be solving in order to get the outcome that they believe? So I want to call it something really important, and we're going to go into the second piece of this. But the reason that you're uncovering not only what they think the problem is, but why they believe that, is because when you're challenging, I wouldn't challenge someone's reason for doing something. I wouldn't challenge why they want to do that. What I would challenge, hypothetically, is that the reason of why they believe that is incorrect. So that's how you can get away with, quote unquote, get away with challenging someone, but still being in the right ego state. So I'm going to give you an example of this, and then we'll go on to the second question. But I went home, and my sister, actually, oddly enough, she'd kill me for saying this, is an ER doctor. So I came home, and she was really helpful for questions when I came home and was developing this material. So I came home and I said, hey, I think I was all the way back in Texas. I said, I think I have stomach ulcers, and I think it's because of stress. She goes, okay. And she started asking a number of different questions. Where's the pain? How long has it been happening? And I'm like, well, I think it's stomach ulcers because it came all of a sudden. I've had stomach ulcers in the past. It's a really blinding pain, right in my stomach, and I've been working a lot of hours so that I think that's what's causing it. She was like, are you working any more hours than normal? I was like, yeah, but my body, I was like, I'm not working any more hours than normal. I think my body's just caving in. She said, let me ask you a question. Are you still drinking coffee every single day? I said, yeah, I'm drinking venti ice Americano. She said, are you still drinking diet energy drinks every day? I said, yeah, I'm drinking those too. And how she blew it up is she said, did you know that there's actually no medical studies that link stress to stomach ulcers? And it was so interesting. I have goosebumps because it was so interesting where my mind pivoted. In my head, I was like, oh, then it's not stress. She's like, I think it's the coffee and the caffeine intake and the acidity levels within your body. And turns out she was right. So instead of saying you're wrong, or instead of saying that's not correct, or you don't know what you're doing, she didn't do any of that. She didn't start the sentence with, let me challenge you here for a second. Instead, she blew up the reason of how I was drawing the assumption. She was like, she uncovered that why I was drawing that assumption is because I thought in my brain that stress caused stomach ulcers. So how she blew it up effectively and quickly and almost had me blow it up myself in my own mind But she was like, there's no medical studies that link stomach ulcers to stress. And I'm like, oh, okay, then it's not stress. It must be the caffeine. She must be right. So you're not challenging them on the spot for ego's sake. The reason why I would tease out all of the reasoning of why they believe that is I want to find out if I don't believe that it's the right problem or I don't believe that it's the right root cause. Like in the former example, with the rep, I'm like, why do you think that they're going to give you this head of sales position? If you hit the quota, he's like, well, they said that they would, and if I just hit quota, blah blah blah. But after I do all the uncovering of like, dude, you've hit 4 other KPIs, then I'm like, I'm not challenging what they want. What I'm challenging is that the way that they drew that assumption, the fact behind that assumption, the fact behind that reasoning is actually incorrect, and they didn't know. Min, you have a question?
Yes, I have two. The first one is from our dear friend Tyler Mentzler or Mentzer. Sorry for butchering your name. This one says, let me pin it on screen. Are all sales pitches centered around pain? Is opportunity selling mostly irrelevant, or is this just a different perspective on pain?
Yeah, great question. My heart's like beating fast, as it always is. I'm going to say this with a lot of reverence for pain selling. If you're pain selling, then number one, I'd argue it's manipulative. You're trying to get your prospect to feel that pain and say that pain out loud. But point blank, if you're pain selling only, meaning I'm like, where does it hurt? Why does it hurt? How long has it been hurting? What's the impact to you at home? Then you are by definition adding no new information to your buyer's day. They already know about pain. You don't know about pain. You don't know why they would buy. You don't know what they think the impact would be. So if you're pain selling and stopping there, then that's all helpful information to you that you can challenge them whenever they're not buying because you know the impact. But that doesn't help them at all. They already knew they already knew how bad it was hurting. They already knew what they thought the impact was. But if you're not asking questions outside that to be able to help them with new information, if you're strictly stopping at how long has that been going on? Have you tried to do something about it? Did that work? And if the goal is pain selling only, and let's call it the pain chart, I think everyone knows what I'm alluding to, but all pain questions, then I believe that the agenda is to manipulate them. And it's not that I believe that people want to be manipulative. I believe that it's the only thing that we've known to date, right? And pain selling got us a certain amount of the way. But if you take away all of that agenda, there's nothing new that your buyer walks away with that they didn't know. There's only one thing they learn in that discovery call that they believe that you know and that they didn't know, and that's price. That's why they asked for it right off the bat. So pain selling is one of the most deleterious and dangerous dangerous methodologies, dangerous concepts to the sales industry today. In my blood, I believe that, and our prospects can feel it. So they start redacting that pain because they're like, I don't want to give this person more bullets or more ammo of why I should buy it because I know that they're just going to use it against me. So I'm going to shut down from the buyer perspective because I can feel it in the room that you're asking those questions and why. But
All
great
right.
question. And then we have a second one.
We do have a second one. This one is the questions keep coming in. But this second one is from our friend Sebastian Torres Ortiz. This one says, how do you diagnostic sell when they don't track their KPIs?
It is a great question. And then we're gonna move on. No one doesn't know their KPI. What they don't know means their lagging indicator. Everyone knows their lagging indicator. If I'm a soccer player, I know what the score was at the end of the game. It's in my head and it's in my heart and it's in my blood. If I'm a sales rep, I know what my quota is and I know what my attainment is to date. If I'm a marketer, I know what my MQL score is to date and I know how much I'm lagging. What I hypothetically don't know, and then I'm going to answer a second question, What I hypothetically don't know is other KPIs, meaning leading indicators like my reply rate, my open rate, what's the quality, what's the time of day that I'm sending them, how many am I sending per day, how many are my reps sending per day, what are all the leading indicators? So that's the first thing that people typically don't know. But usually, I'm assuming that you're asking this question, and Sebastian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would love it. But I usually hear this question a lot whenever people are not taking into account the metric that their buyer is metriced on, but instead are pinning a metric on them that another more important persona in their head cares about. And I'll give you an example. I know a very well-known sales trainer that says we don't sell into sales enablement well. So I listened to a couple calls and I'm like, it's because you're asking them in every single call, what is the conversion ratio? And then when they don't know that, you're bullying them and you're asking them to go find it and being flabbergasted they don't know it. Like the reason sales enablement doesn't know it is because they're not really metriced on it. I didn't say that because, I'm not going to tear anyone's day down. Another sales trainer. Like sales enablement is metriced on time to first deal, time to full ramp, training adoption, methodology adoption, tech adoption, time selling. Those are their KPIs. Those are their lagging indicators. So you'll hear a lot of sales enablement folks jump on the line and they ask over and over and over for the self-diagnosed or self-prescribed prescription. They're like, we need a methodology that's centralized. And the reason that they're asking for that is because they're thinking if it's centralized, then it will help with adoption. It'll help with tracking. So their KPIs are different. So a problem is only a problem in relationship to a metric. So if I'm talking to a sales enablement leader, I'm gearing everything that the problem that they probably want to solve is around one of these 5 KPIs: time to first deal, time to full ramp, training adoption, methodology adoption, tech adoption. Like that's what they're living, breathing, eating, and thinking about. If I'm talking to a sales development leader, let's see if y'all can guess. Jump in the chat. If I'm talking to a sales development leader, usually what are they after? What is the number one thing that they're after? What is the number one KPI that a sales dev leader or SDR is metriced against? See if anyone, not closed deals, getting close, but leads, pipeline, meeting scheduled. It's meeting scheduled, and then Angela, brilliant, an opportunity converted. Sometimes they have influence pipeline in there as a little one, but it's usually meeting scheduled, and did it become an SQL or did it become an op? So do they care about quality? Yes, as long as it becomes an op. But do they care if it converts into close one? Not really. That's not what they're metriced on. If I'm talking to a sales leader, all they care about is quota attainment. Did they hit ARR? So I'll give you an example, and then I promise we'll move. When there is a lead list sent from marketing, let's see if y'all will jump in the chat. A lead list is sent from an event or from content downloads from marketing over to the SDRs and the sales team. And what does the sales team usually say about those leads? Thumbs up or thumbs down? They look at that lead list. Look at this. No good, junk, BS, garbage. They suck. And the reason that they say that is because what do they mean by junk? What are they looking through? Yeah, they just wanted the gift. What are they looking through? And why do they think it's junk? When they look at that lead list, what are some examples of why they think it's junk when they look at that lead list? Number of different things. I'll get us started. It's not even the right email address. It's like go screw yourself at gmail.com. But there's another couple. Let's see if y'all can guess. When they look at that list, why do they think that it's trash? And why do they think that it's crap? Why do they think that those leads are no good? How are they defining that in their head? Let's see if anyone can guess. Maybe everyone's just sick of my games. Usually when I see AEs look at it, they're like, it's not the right title. It's not anyone with power. It's not the right size organization. We've already sold into this person. We're already currently selling into this person. The reason the AEs care about that and the marketer doesn't is because a marketer is metriced on MQL. So if someone downloads content, even if they use a Gmail address, it becomes an MQL a lot of times. So the marketer's happy. They're like, here's 5,000 leads, and they think they've done their job because their metric is an MQL. But an SDR looks at that lead list and they're like, this is mostly crap. And what they mean by that is I can't even reach out to the person. It's not the right email address because they're metriced on meeting set. So if it doesn't have the right email address, then I can't set any meetings with it. But the AEs look at it and they're like, this is absolute crap. Because they're like, yes, they don't have email addresses, but they're not even the right person. They're too low in the organization. It's an organization that we wouldn't even want to sell into. So all of that to say, a problem is only a problem in the presence of a metric. If I'm a sales rep, I don't give a crap if it's an MQL. What I give a crap is it's someone with buyer intent that's going to purchase because I'm metriced on quota attainment. So an SDR is only after booked meetings. A CS rep is only going to be after net retention, renewal, upsell, cross-sell, sometimes NPS score. There's always a quantitative metric that answers a qualitative question of, is this a good blank? So if I'm a business owner, is this like, are we growing? What is our revenue? If I'm a CRO, then I care about revenue. So I don't want a whole bunch of deals to close and then churn. But if I'm a sales rep, I'm metriced on quota attainment. So do I care if they close and then churn? Not really, because I closed them and I hit my metric. So the problem, the hint in the room is if you're watching this right now and you can't close your eyes and think of your 5 buyer personas and think of what they're metriced on, their lagging indicator, that's where you have to start because that's the problem they're going to define as solving. Usually it's going to be around one of those metrics. So the first step of what you're challenging is the problems. We got to keep moving. Great question though. The second step of the second thing that you are quote unquote challenging is the root cause. So you have to understand what they think the root cause is if they've developed it. Usually they have. Why do they believe that that's the root cause? And then I have to understand what do I think the root cause is and why do I think that? So I'll give you an example. Someone will come into, discovery and they'll usually either with the self-prescription, what they think the solution is. They'll say, I need cold email training. I'm like, oh, there's a self-prescribed solution. And I'm like, okay, if you don't mind me asking, why? What are you trying to solve? And they're like, well, my reps are behind. They usually don't ever go into the problem, the metric problem, because it's embarrassing. They're like, because their cold emails are crap. I'm like, okay, so they think that the root cause of it is cold email quality. So I'm like, if you don't mind me asking, can you give me an example of the emails that they're sending to date? Sometimes I'll have them share their screen and they'll share their screen and they'll show me the quality of the cold email. And I'm asking questions like, what's the open rate? What's the reply rate? Because I want to diagnose, maybe they're wrong. Their cold emails are actually pretty high quality. But maybe there's some other root causes that they didn't know about. So I'm number one, trying to validate that this root cause even exists. But number two, I'm trying to find out, are there any other root causes that they also need to change? And I'll give you an example of this. Cold email quality is actually, everyone's going to crucify me alive. Cold email quality is not the main predictor on whether it's certainly not the sole predictor, but it's not the main sole heavy hitter predictor on whether your prospects are going to respond. Whether the email even shows up in their inbox is. So email deliverability is huge. So if you have less than a 50% open rate, you have email deliverability issues, meaning the email aren't even winding up in their inbox. So it doesn't matter how good the email was if they didn't even get it in their inbox. Most of the emails go to spam, promo, or hit filters. That's the reality. So there's a number of different things that contribute to that. If you have subject lines that are all the same, it will make your email deliverability worse. If you have a lot of links, it's going to make your email deliverability worse, not only for you, but for your entire team. If you have a lot of exclamation points, I have a hit list of all the different words. If you're using words like problem, solution, discount, free, any of those words, are going to make email deliverability worse. If you are sending any more than 50 emails a day, it's going to make your email deliverability worse. If you're sending them at the same time or equidistant, meaning if you batch out 25 emails at one time, it's going to make your email deliverability worse because Google's watching, and Google's really smart, Brendan. It's really, really smart. So it's like they just sent out 25 emails, and it's like this is a non-human activity. So they're going to put you in timeout a little bit. So when they say cold email quality is bad, and I'm like, well, show me the email. Let's take a look. And usually, in part, it is. But if I'm driving up cold email quality, the faster way to do that is figure out, do they have email deliverability, and are they even winding up in the inbox to begin with? So the step 2 here is I'm uncovering what do they think the root cause is and why do they believe that. Sometimes they believe that because they're like, well, look at this email. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's bad. Or sometimes they're like, I think our emails are crap because my VP of sales looked in, and he flipped out. He or she flipped out because it was so bad, and it was long blocks of text. We're the number one blank who helps blank do blank. Here's our case study. It's just bubbling at the top. Looking forward to it. Quick chat, quick question. SEO, ROI, cheers. Hi, first name. We're the number one blank who helps blank do blank. So point being, sometimes it's that. Sometimes they're like, my open rate is really low or my reply rate's really low. But the second step of this is I'm trying to uncover what do they think the root cause is and why do they believe that that's the root cause. Sometimes they'll say, well, I read an article, that if you write any more than X amount of words, and 200 words, then your responses are going to tank. And my reps are writing 400 word emails. So I'm really trying to tease out that justification of why they believe that. Because maybe the root cause is wrong. Maybe it's not the only cause that they need to change. And maybe the assumption of how, the punchline of it is, I'm checking for root cause. Do they have the right answer? Do they have the complete answer? But when I'm uncovering the reasons as to why, I'm looking into their work. So I'm like, do we have right answer, wrong work? Do we have right work, wrong answer? Or do we have partially right work, incomplete answer, but it's correct? But the second piece of this is uncovering their self-diagnose. What do they believe the root cause is? Why do they believe that? What do I think the root cause is? And why do I believe that as well? So I know how to challenge, that I can blow up the reason underneath it that supports it. The third piece here is current impacts. So I know this is 90 minutes. This is brutal for everyone on the line. I appreciate y'all staying with me. But the current impacts is going to be, how is this impact is just extended pain, right? And it's a thing that mobilizes them to buy. So the third piece of this is uncovering what do they believe the current impact is and why do they believe that? And then the second step is, what do I think the current impact of this business problem is? Do I believe that? So I'll give you an example. Sometimes people say, so I need to book better quality meetings for my AEs, because my AEs are complaining at me that these leads aren't high quality, right? And a lot of our opportunities are getting declined. They're not becoming SQLs. So I need to make sure it's with quote unquote the right person. So they're like, VP of sales has gotten really heated recently. They've come at me and they're like, these need to be with better people. So they believe that the current impact that's happening is not only are they not hitting their SQL quota, but they believe that mainly the AEs are missing quota because these leads aren't good enough. That's what they believe the current impact is. And their VP of sales breathing down their neck as the SDR leader is what's mobilizing them to buy, because they're like, I'm going to get fired. So the current impact that they believe is that the AEs are missing quota because my meetings aren't high quality. But if I ask a certain amount of questions into how the AEs are doing discovery, I'm like, actually, and I look into the titles and it's like, these are all director level plus at mid-market companies, which is one of the main predictors that's going to help them close, who have this certain amount of criteria problems. Their AEs just don't know how to do discovery. So I'm like, even if you fix the meetings, of, that the meetings hit a certain level of title, that instead of director, senior director, or instead of this buyer persona, it's this buyer persona. Instead of a VP of sales enablement is going to get in the chair, and their AEs still aren't going to know how to close because they don't know how to do discovery. So the current impact is not that the current impact of them not having high quality leads is not that their AEs are missing quota. That current impact is happening, but it's not tied to the problem at all. Even if you fix that and you flip all of the leads that you're booking from director of sales to director of sales enablement, their AEs are still not going to know how to close. So this third piece is I'm understanding what do they believe that the current impact is, and why do they believe that, and what do I think the current impact is, and why do I believe that, so that I'm able to challenge again by blowing up. I'm always blowing it up by uncovering or correcting the reason of how they drew that assumption. So when they say, well, my AEs are missing quota because of me, I'm not asking them, for instance, I'm not asking them, well, do you think that that's correct? They're like, yeah, that's why I said it. I had someone ask me a discovery question the other day, and they didn't mean to do this. And I keep my mouth shut, because I'm offensive enough. Offensive enough. Everyone wants me to just smile and move on throughout my day. They're like, do you really think, you mentioned that your goal was to impact the sales community. Do you really think that you're going to get there by X, Y, and Z? I'm like, yeah, bro. Yeah, Brendan, I do. That's why I'm freaking doing it. If you think that that's not correct, that's fine. But you need to be asking questions to understand A, my goal, B, my outcome, C, my problem, D, my root cause, all of this stuff to help correct my assumption. So I would love if you correct my assumptions. The most valuable people to me, around me, are the people who can tell me crap that I don't know. Here's the thing. It's not hard. There's a lot of crap I don't know. Ask men. Ask men. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know from a technical perspective. Like my favorite Bill James interview. Bill James is one of the biggest inspirations to me from a content perspective. He basically put together the Society of American Baseball Research, what later became known as sabermetrics, which is how Billy Beane, the guy in Moneyball, the movie's not really accurate, but the guy in Moneyball drew his assumptions based on Bill James' research. And he said, I'll never forget this. When I'm sad, when I'm lonely, when I'm anything, I watch Bill James interviews. He's brilliant. He created the entire ecosystem of how baseball statistics are run today. And he said, a lot of people come to me and they're like, how do you keep coming up with questions? Because they're after putting out new theories in baseball or answering new really spiking questions, blah, blah. And he said, it's very, very simple. The reason that y'all are running out of topics is because your goal is to make a splash. He said, my goal is really nothing. How I view the world is in terms of the world according to the things that I don't know. And when you start looking at the world and that infrastructure, how many things do I believe that there are out there that I don't know? There is a massive world out there for you. The amount of things that I don't know is endless. I could live a billion lifetimes and not learn enough, right? So I am after uncovering for my prospect the quickest way to build value, the quickest way to be in their corner, the quickest way to earn trust, the quickest way for them to want to keep you around is not to compliment them. It's not to manipulate them. It's not to pain sell. It's to find out information about, not generally speaking, them in specific that they don't know that's hurting them, and to make them aware of it and solve the problem for them. So these current impacts, what I'm really digging into from the challenge perspective is I'm like, is this current impact linked to this business problem, this metric problem at all? Because they might not be. The next piece is future impacts. This is a big one. Man, I've got to speed up. This is a big one, and I'm going to get into the pieces there. We got 35 minutes left. Everyone's like, crap. I love the Brendan count in the chat, by the way. Really sorry. I just have this rep in my head named Brendan. It actually is a real person. But anywho, I digress. His name's not Brendan though. So this next piece is future impacts. This is a huge bucket. This is the bucket where you will mop up. You will clean up in terms of helping your prospect and knowing things that they don't know. Future impacts is all the things that are going to happen to them if they don't solve a current problem, or all the impacts that are going to happen if they don't solve a problem that they knew about, but they didn't know about this future impact. I am always after future impact. And I'll give you 2 examples, and then we can break it down. One example is Southwest Airlines. Once we hit November, December, and everyone was lost in airports and all their suitcases were everywhere, every sales rep in the world wanted to sell a new system to Southwest Airlines. But the person who's after helping someone needs to predict and get in front of Southwest Airlines before it happens. A problem is only equal to their perspective of the problem. So they might believe that a problem is the size of the state of Texas, but they might not realize that all these other states exist. So the first thing I'm trying to find is, what do they believe is the future impact? Not only so it might be incorrect, but what are all the other things that they didn't know about that will also add to the size of the problem? Because the problem only equals the pain plus the impact. So Southwest Airlines had pain. I guarantee it. They're like, our system sucks, it's not working, and it's causing some users to churn. So they thought the size of the problem was the impact of some users were churning and the current pain I'm sure that IT had and that their prospects had. What they didn't realize, though, was the future impact that if they remained as is, which they did, because they didn't know, I guarantee you, if Southwest knew they were going to have that impact, the size that they did, people were stranded. CNN was covering it. Forbes is covering it. It is, I guarantee you, going to be a business case study in universities for years to come, making a mockery of a brand that used to be known as US, like sweetheart, darling airline, would always give you peanuts and would give you a free drink and were super nice to you. Ruined because one impact, one massive impact. And I believe in the core of me, if they knew that size of impact was coming, they would have solved for it. They're going to be a case study in universities of how not to do business. So all these sales reps, I guarantee you, are piling in now. They're like, hey, so you need a new system? Saw that everyone's stranded in airports. But I'm like, Brendan, the time to help them has passed. You can help them now, sure. But they didn't know this was going to happen to them. And if you had just gotten in beforehand, not only would you have solved it. You would have made a sale. You would have helped them avoid the most massive impact in their history. And if nothing else, I hope that everyone knows the sincerity of this. If nothing else, the one thing that salespeople are not after is diagnosing things that people don't know. So if I want to isolate an entire market where I'm the only salesperson in the room, the fastest way to do it is not to gobble up your competitors. The fastest way to do it as a sales is to bat and sell in the region that no one else is batting or selling in. And that is in the unknown. What are the future impacts that would happen? Like, I would take a step back and say, what problem do I solve for my buyer personas? What metric problem do I solve? What is typically the impact that happens to someone if they don't solve this problem if they have it? So let's give you an example here. So the metric that AEs are metriced on is quota attainment. The problem that they usually want to solve for is they're not hitting quota attainment. So if y'all could jump in the chat, what usually happens to an AE or a VP of sales if they don't hit quota attainment? Yeah, Sebastian already got it. They get fired. After how long, Sebastian? How long does it take for someone to get, yeah, they get put on a PIP, they get fired. How long does it usually take? 3 months? 6 months? The organization? So it's like, ta-da, you've already solved it. Like that's what they are after. So I'm after understanding what are all the things that they don't know about that if they happen, this person's going to get fired. There's a future impact that they didn't know about. So the second example I have to give you is Sherry Levitin, who I love. She's a sales trainer. She said that there was a sales rep that basically approached her and they were selling different card games. Does she have a need for that? No. Does she want to buy that? No. Why? There's no problem that it solves for her. They asked her a number of different questions. How old are you? Do you have dementia, like a history of dementia in the family? They asked her a number of different nutritional questions. They're like, did you know that if you don't do active puzzles or active things to keep your memory sharp and active from the years of 40 to 60, you're 3 times more likely to get dementia 15 years earlier in your life. The way that you can prevent that is by doing games today. Like this one, she bought instantly. She didn't realize that a future impact of her not keeping her brain active from a puzzle perspective was dementia. So did she, like, it kills me when reps are like, do they have buyer intent? What do they want? What do they need? Did Sherry need board games that day? No. Did she have any buyer intent? Zero. Did she have a problem she wanted to solve? No. All of a sudden, they're like, if you have history of dementia in your family, it's passed down generation to generation. It's main predictor. She says yes. They're like, one of the things that can counteract that, one of the things that she currently wasn't doing was doing board games. So all of a sudden, you have created buyer intent out of thin air. So I'll do one more example. I promise we're going to move on. But I see the sales industry. When I look at the sales industry and they say there was no buyer intent, you need, what does the prospect need? Or what does the prospect want? When I look at that and I look at the sales industry, I don't see anything good, bad, or ugly, or right or wrong. I see an imperfect understanding of the way people buy and why people buy. If I go up to someone and I'm like, do you want cancer medication? And they're like, no. I'm like, they don't know that they have cancer. So do they have any want for it? No. Do they have any need for it? No. But they actually, what if they do? What if they do have that condition, terrible condition, but they don't know it and you don't know it until you ask a certain amount of questions and run some certain tests to figure that out. So people within the totally, Ibrahim said, you sell benefits. If you are saying more time, more money, save time, save money, lack of revenue on the table, you are benefit-centric selling. If you're talking about ROI, you are benefit-centric selling. So I'll give one more example. I have made this promise 5 times, and we promise we'll move on. But I was talking to a platform yesterday, and they're like, the problem that we solve is that we help identify leads for people. Like basically, if they think that they sell into sales enablement, sales, whatever, then they will proactively find additional leads for you, run some campaigns that you give them for you. And then from a data perspective, based on who closed one, who books meetings, and those conversion rates, will proactively suggest to you different accounts. And I'm like, bro, Brendan, sorry, I'm in deep. And then they give me all these ROI charts. This will pay off because then the SDRs won't have to do research on accounts. This will pay off because then SDRs don't have to spend the time finding prospects. This will pay off. This is the ROI. This is the calculator, because then they don't have to go through all the tiresome work and loading all the prospects into the cadences, and they don't have to find prospects themselves and blah, blah. I was like, Brendan, you got to stop. My head's going to implode. Here's the thing. You don't solve the problem. That's not a problem. More time, more money, less time, less money, leaving revenue on the table is not a problem. The problem that you solve, respectfully, is that these SDRs don't know what accounts are the best accounts. So they book these meetings. The AEs get them and they're like, these are trash. They decline them from an SQL perspective or opportunity perspective. Industry average is 45% conversion. That they say this is an actual SQL. And one of its main predictors is the account. So if your software helps understand from a conversion perspective which people are most likely to book meetings, what accounts were most likely to book meetings, what accounts were most from those meetings to close one for a bigger total with the shorter sales cycle and for more expansion selling, and then you proactively suggest prospect based on those criteria, what you're rectifying in the process is you're like, okay, maybe they booked meetings with a certain amount of accounts, but then they didn't close one and they're lower conversion for these other accounts. You're, from a data perspective, understanding what their actual target market is, because a 22-year-old or a 21-year-old who logs in as an SDR, unless they're assigned accounts within ABM, and marketers usually don't know either. They're just picking the criteria that they think is best, and the sales reps are pissed because they're like, these aren't the right accounts. These are, like, you just don't quote unquote get it. What you're understanding from the data perspective and what you're writing, so to speak, is that they're booking meetings, more meetings with the right accounts so that they can exceed their quota, because they're not hitting their quota because, number one, they're not booking meetings. Number two, when they are booking meetings, they're not showing up. Number three, when they are showing up, they don't convert to become an SQL because the AE's like, they don't have any buyer intent. And even if they accept them into the pipeline, the AEs, I'm like, how you sell to a VP sales is they're like, no, the conversion's trash. So that's the problem you're solving, is quota attainment and SQL quota attainment for SDRs. But how you're doing that is understanding what are the right accounts for them. It's not about sequencing. I'm like, sequencing what? Accounts that still won't convert, people who still won't convert, people who still won't buy. Instead of saying, I'm going to save you the time of loading a whole bunch of people into a prospecting sequence to try to sell them water when they're based underneath a purified waterfall, you are proactively identifying for them that maybe I should send sequences and emails instead to someone who is based in the desert and has been there for 4 days without water and is on the brink of death. So does the SDR know? No, but they don't have to. And that's what your software is doing for them. So the future impact is always going to be anchored. And like, from a split perspective, I would say 95% of the time they have a misdiagnosis, meaning they believe something is not correct, in my opinion. But 100% of the time they have missed a diagnosis. They haven't included something that is a part of that. So future impacts is a huge bucket for me. So I'm like, there's a lot of impacts that are going to happen down the road that I'm trying to prevent them. Sherry wouldn't have bought if that sales rep wasn't pristine. She'd be like, no, I don't need card games, because she didn't know the future impact that she might get early set dementia because she didn't do something now. So she bought like 15 of them, right? And she told the story about it. Or Southwest Airlines, they didn't have any base on the side of the, they already had pain. They already had current impact, but they didn't have that future impact that they were missing. So if I'm a sales rep, I'm like, what conditions would have to be true to predict this future impact that people don't know about? So in the Southwest analogy, I'm like, I'm looking for people who have built their own systems in-house, that is built by 10 IT directors, for instance, that only have like 10 IT employees on staff, that I notice a lag time in their booking. I'm like, I'm looking for people with all the leading indicators. And I'm like, hey, based on these 10 criteria, maybe you'll be okay. But I'm guessing based on these 10 responses you gave me, that there is going to be a massive impact 3 or 4 months down the line. And this is why. And that is all you asking questions that will help you be able to diagnose that, not asking them questions to lead them somewhere. Okay, next one's current event triggers. I got 20 minutes. I'm going to go rapid fire. Next one's current event triggers. Current event trigger is the last thing that made them want to buy. And why do they believe that was the last thing that made them want to buy? Maybe it was a conversation that they had where the VP of sales reamed them out about lead quality, and they mentioned, oh, maybe this just isn't a fit, and they're like, crap, I'm going to get fired. So the future impact and pain, the future impact rose high enough to where like, okay, I'm going to solve this. It is a priority. So the size of the problem and the likelihood that it's going to come true are the two main predictors of that. So current event trigger is, what is the last thing that made them want to buy? What are the things that have currently happened that are adding to the size of the problem, and why do they believe that? Future event triggers are the things that are going to happen in the future that warrant them solving for today. So I'll give you an example. I am based in Paris now, I think. And I'm not even going to go into it. The systems here could use some work. With the government, sorry guys, hope that Thailand or French judges are on the line. Systems with the government, passwords, logins, door codes, and I'm in the process of redecorating. Some of the pain that I've run into is essentially, I can't get anything delivered. I literally stood outside for 6 hours waiting for a package, and they're like, we tried to stop by, but you weren't here. And I'm like, I'm literally standing outside. So unless you tunneled underneath this apartment complex, because it's the only door, then you didn't try and stop by, Brendan. I was sitting out here waiting, desperate and thirsty as shit for this package. So point being, a future event trigger that I didn't know is, originally I had one door that I had a 5 password key in. Then they created a second door with the new 5 password key in. A future event trigger that I didn't know about is that they changed the passwords to both doors every single month. So what that means to me is I put the passwords for anything that I was shipping for both of these doors for multiple packages that, thanks to France, became invalid 15 minutes ago. So the future event trigger is that all the passwords are going to change on the first of every single month. If I had known that as a seller, if I had said like, hey, okay, typically in France, they're going to reset passwords from a security perspective every single month, that's something that an American who's moving to France wouldn't know, right? So if I'm selling, let's imagine that I'm selling a software that helps receive packages and helps them get them to you safely. If you would have tried to sell that to me 2 months ago, I would have said, no, absolutely not. I'm just going to buy the packages and have them sent here. But if I know the future event trigger, that they change the passwords every single month, and that people will basically, some people rang my doorbell, the doorbell, didn't ring, and they didn't even knock on the door, and they're like, she wasn't home. By the way, when you receive a package in Paris, if you don't have your physical ID on you, and I'm talking like you order a stick of gum from Amazon, if you don't have your physical ID on you and you're not home during the delivery, they will not deliver it. I didn't know that. I didn't know you had to be home. I didn't know you had to have and I didn't know that they usually won't even come in through the door when you have the codes correct. I didn't know. So the future event trigger, things that are going to happen to me that are going to cause a problem that's worth solving for in the present. If you had tried to sell me a software or a relay point or some kind of paid service, receive packages that I could go in a consistent way and go pick them up, I would have said, absolutely not. I'm like, why? Now I know why. Right? So I'm like, a seller, to kind of bring it home here, then we're going to go into this section 2 and breeze through. To kind of bring it home here, every seller in the world wants to pain sell to me now. Now I know that I have that pain. Now I have run into the impact of what is happening. I'm sure everyone wants to sell to me now. And sellers everywhere are asking the question of like, how do I find people with pain? How do I tease it out and blah, blah. I'm like, you should just look for the lead indicators of what is going to cause a problem for them that's worth solving for today, that's going to make them run into an impact in the future. So in my case scenario, for instance, it wouldn't be that tough. I want to look for any new expats, any people who just moved into apartment, anyone who just got their French ID card, new people to the city who are moving into apartment complexes. I could even Google search and say, like, what are the hot areas where shippers can't park? They can't deliver. That's another problem area, is they can't park around my place. So they're like, screw it. I'm not going to park. Like, their car might be towed. Any kind of complex with multiple security passwords, and bada bing, bada boom. Before when I get up, someone else moves in to the apartment complex. I'm like, did you know that? Like, you just moved in. Are you redecorating? That's the question they would ask. They shouldn't ask, do you have any, like, do you want to buy a service that receives the packages? I'd be like, no, Brendan, get out of my face. But I'd say, are you planning on redecorating? Are you going to be doing that online? Or are you going to planning on doing that in person in some shops? Most people are going to do it online at that point. Is this your first move in the city? Did you just become a recent expat? I'm like, let me tell you about something. And all of a sudden, you have saved me from the headache that I had to learn from experience. So, like, bare minimum, a pain-based sale is a lazy sale. It's making my prospect be in pain first. It's like, I want to get ahead of that, not only for them, good God for them, but number 2, because no sellers approached me with that kind of service beforehand. No seller. And if they had, and they stacked up all those things, I would have validated to make sure they became true, but I would have bought right away. I would have bought right away, and I would have trusted the seller because of it. Okay, and the last one here is solutions. What do they think the solution is? Why do they believe that? Usually, if I had to guess from experience, people come in with a cause, a problem, and a solution in mind. They're like, I want cold email training. The reason is I think my emails are trash. The reason I think back is I look at them and I throw up. And the problem that I want to solve is that I want to change the quality of my emails, which is the root cause, so that I can hit this business problem, of my reps are 3 meetings. They're at, 5 meetings out of 10 SQLs for the month. So they believe it's self-diagnosis. They need cold email trainings because they believe that will help them with cold email quality. They believe the root cause is that the cold emails are trash. And the reason they believe that is they look at them, they just vomit in their head. I hear that a lot, oddly enough. And then the problem that they believe is that they believe that in changing the root cause and getting the quota. And I know why they believe that, because they're like, well, cold email quality is the main predictor. So I'm like, number of different things that I'm hearing that are incorrect in those statements. I'm like, will training get them there? Is that the only root cause? Probably not. Is that the problem? Is that the root cause that will change to get them there, to solve the problem? Probably not the only one. They're going to have to change. And then will changing that root cause help them solve the business problem, of getting to quota? And do I believe at this point, and I say this with all due respect, there's a lot of people who have bought me, and I'm like, run me through the numbers, and I get a system on their KPI, and y'all can give me a genuine review here. If you came to an SDR leader who was new to the organization, they had been hired from the outside, their comp is super high, and they had taken over the program, and their SQL total they had to hit was 15, let's say. It was at 10 before they were hired. Now it's at 5, and that's been going on for 6 months. And so they're like, upper management is giving me budget to buy cold email training. Do you think that's going to save them in time? Yes or no? If y'all go into the chat. So last prod. No, it's not. I'm like, if quota attainment went down with you for the last 6 months, you're, you know, I'm like, unless you're cousins with somebody, it's not gonna turn out well. So I'm like, I cannot tell you the amount of clients that I've had that are gone halfway through the training. So I am after challenging in my own head all of this. But to be able to do that, I have to gather the data. What do they think the root cause is and why? The problem is and why? What do they think the impact is and why? What do they think the future impact is and why? And the reason I want to do that, I've got 9 minutes left. There's only 2 things that you're challenging in your head. And how you can do this, by the way, is if I were watching this, my former self was watching, I'd be like, wow, she's really mouthy, number 1. She's got some issues. But number 2, do me a favor, take out a sheet of paper or your notes. List your 5 buyer personas. Go to Google if you don't know them. List their common KPIs, meaning their lagging indicator. What are they hired, fired, promoted, and demoted drive? If you don't know them, then go Google search them. And then try to hunt for the leading indicators or the root causes that could help stack into getting them to that lagging indicator. So for instance, if I put sales development rep or sales development leader, like their KPI is SQL or opportunity, the leading indicators, the root causes of someone not hitting quota is usually, it's only going to be one of 7 things really. The quality of the messaging that they're using, the quantity that they're using, the time of day that they're doing that messaging, what channel, is it cold calls, is it cold emails, at LinkedIn, etc. What account, is it the accounts with the right predictors, what persona, is it director level and above, blah, blah, the ones that will convert? Are they multi-threaded? How many people are they reaching out at the time? And especially, and are their emails showing up? What's the deliverability? The validity of the contact data. Those are the only 8. So I'd write my buyer personas out, write the lagging indicators, is quota attainment for them, and then go after an exhaustive list that these are the only ones that would cause this person to hit or not hit quota. So when they come in and they say it's cold email quality, you're like, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. We're going to ask some questions to see. But the things ethically, and again, this will put your numbers on steroids. You don't even know what to do with the business, honestly, is then ask questions about all of these other root causes. If you don't mind me asking, how many emails are you sending a day? Sometimes they'll be like 200. I'm like, yeah, they're screwing their email deliverability. It's not landing in the inbox. And I'm like, a lot of times they're like, I don't know. I'm like, can you share me on your screen? I'll walk them through your sales engagement platform. Like, click on reports, click on calls. I don't ask them, do you know what time of day? And you can tell whether your prospects know it. You're like, what time of day are you sending their emails? If they don't immediately respond, 3:35 to 4:35 typically, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which usually you don't. They're like, I think they're sending, it's like, just share your screen, Brendan. Let's walk through this together. And they'll find out some information. And I'm like, sometimes they're sending them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning. They think it's great. And I'm like, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday afternoon, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., 5 minutes before the hour, after the hour, especially 15 hours before the top of the hour, are the best time to send messages. So maybe you have great messaging, but you're sending it all on Monday morning, which every other sales rep is doing at that time. You have to basically be on fire or you are fire. One of those 2 for me to pay attention to on a Monday morning. So I'm like, what time of day do they send the messages? They're like, and I'm like, share your screen, share the screen. I'm like, it's always Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday mornings when they're sending their emails. I'm like, oop, there's another root cause that they didn't know about. So I would go on the crawl for them of like, and I'm like, So what are the leading predictors of SQL count? Is it Bandt criteria or is it something overt? They're like, yeah, so usually it only becomes an SQL if they have two out of the 4 of Bandt. And I'm like, budget authority need. And I'm like, it's too subjective. I'm like, oh, there's another predictor. They're probably their conversion. The swing that I've seen is that on one team, an AE was accepting 5% of the meetings, and another AE on that team was accepting 95%. The swing was because the reps were they're metric on conversion, so they don't want to add it to their pipeline. They add it right before it closes. They want to be the king or queen of conversion because that's how they're metriced. So I'm like, if it's subjective criteria, you're dead. So the 3 steps I would do: list out buyer personas, list out what they're metriced on, list out all the root causes. When they tell you their root cause and you're like, okay, I want to figure out if that's correct or not. The second piece is I want to figure out if there are any other root causes that they need to address. Even if it's something that you don't sell, people are like, how do I be more credible? This is a micro rant. I'm going to give a couple points and we're going to close out. I'm like, people will be like, how do I be more kind? Or how do I show them that I really know them? Or that I'm empathetic, or, that I'm human. And I'm like, okay, that's all really nice and good. But Brendan, sorry, man, that's 11. Brendan, here's the thing. I don't care if someone is kind necessarily or empathetic or is a human. I care if they're a human that can help me solve the shit that I need to solve. That is what I care about. So like, are you a nice person? I mean, I think that that's table stakes. Don't be a jerk. But I'm like, being an expert in your field is where you're going to win your buyers. I don't care who my vendors are. Most of my vendors, like men will tell you, I don't know a lot about men. I'm like, I know he's an APAC right now, for instance, but I'm like, I don't know all the inner workings of him, but do I care? Not necessarily, because I'm like, where Min has really made me care is he gives me a heads up on billions of things that I don't know and I don't have the expertise on. So I'm like, do I like men? My family loves men. They invite him over for dinner. Why? Because he has solved so many problems for me that I don't know about. So I'm like, was Min human? Well, yeah. Was he nice? Yeah. Does he have empathy? Yes. But all of those are a side note. Min has helped me. That's why I'm like, I love when he calls, because I'm like, he's helping me. That's it. So the things that you're challenging, we're going to through this in 90 seconds. The problems that you're challenging, these only bust into 2 categories. The reason you're going through all of that process and uncovering their self-diagnosis and your diagnosis is to challenge one of 2 things. Either a misdiagnosis, meaning something they believe that's not correct, or a missed diagnosis, something that they missed entirely. Usually this bucket is bigger, but this bucket is hella big too. So the problems that they misdiagnose, meaning solving that won't get them their outcome, or a problem that they missed that they also need to solve to get their outcome. So like with that AE example, just hitting quota didn't get them the head of sales role. The root, here's the chart, you'll get the deck. Root causes, it's what are the root causes they misdiagnosed, meaning the root causes they believe to be true, but are not correct. And what are the root causes that they missed? Like deliverability, the time of day that they're sending the account. Current impacts, same thing. What are the misdiagnoses? They believe the current impact is tied to the problem, but it's not. And what are the current impacts that they missed in their self-diagnosis? Future impacts, same things. What are the misdiagnoses? This is the rare bucket. The massive bucket are what are the future impacts that they have missed, like Sherry. That was something that was worth solving for her. Current event triggers, all the things that have happened that add to or exacerbate, make the problem we're solving for right now. What are the ones they misdiagnose? What are all the ones that they've missed? Usually this bucket missed is going to be bigger. Future event triggers. What are all the things that are going to happen in the present, or sorry, happen in the future that are worth solving for today? Like all the codes change in Paris every single month. They had told me that on July 2nd. It would have helped me. The event trigger is that it's going to change in 30 days. So I would have bought today. What are all the ones that they misprognose and they missed in their prognosis? and then the solution, finally the solution. If you are prescribing a solution, if you are diving into the details, here's the punchline. If you are just uncovering pain so that you can map the features of your solution to their pain point, it's unethical to sell that way. That might help you close a little bit better. I think prospects are getting onto it. But it doesn't help them. It might help you sell a little bit better. But here's the other thing. Renewals, resells, referrals are all gold. And the only way you can do that, it's not, you don't necessarily just have to be malevolent, that you're like, I'm just going to sell this to them. But if you give them something and it doesn't solve their problem, they're going to see you in a bad light. Not because they think that you're skeezy necessarily, but because you didn't know, and it's your job to know. It's not theirs. They need you to. So none of this comes from a bad place. Solutions that they misprescribed and the solutions that they missed in their prescription. This is where you clean it from a rev perspective, is there might be solutions that you sell that they missed. The reason they missed that is they missed the problem, they missed the root cause, they missed the impacts that were going to happen until you came along. So I only got through 36 of the slides. I didn't even get through the majority of this. But in summary, let's see if I can get to the summary slide. In summary, our buyers need more. They need us. They want us, and they would welcome us to know more for them. And the great news is, it's easy peasy to get there. Start today, and it's an ongoing process for me. I KPI myself with learning 1 new theory and 5 new vocabulary words every single week. So the great news is we have a massive opportunity in front of us. And that opportunity is to help our buyer, to get them in another stage because of their interaction with us. All that starts with is knowing more about your buyer and how you can help them in diagnosing whenever you're in the room. So that's everything. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for coming to this webinar, for going into the chat. You guys make it so much fun. I mean it. And answering all the questions and it's probably brutal as 90 minutes. Thank you everyone for coming. We're going to do webinar number 3 next week, same time, same bat place, same bat channel. And we're going to go into the 12 different types of problems that you can solve. But I say thank you for showing up today, for making this so much fun. And for Zettel, we're on a new platform called Zettel that's been solving all kinds of problems. So thank you to Zettel for supporting this. But I really, really mean it when I appreciate you for showing up today. So I will see you all next week. I hope everyone has a great, productive week. And as always, may the selling odds be ever in your favor. Little cat and Severdeen. Okay, toodles, y'all. See you next week.